Podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Ann Webb, and I have today my friend and intuitive reader, psychic medium, Lee Walczak. Did I get it right?
Hey, you said it right.
Yay! Even if you
Good,
told me like
good.
5 minutes ago, I still like tend to might maybe forget these things.
Yeah, no, you said it perfect. All good.
Awesome. Yeah, so I met you because I was on your podcast and then we became Facebook
Yeah,
friends.
yeah, yeah. You came on a podcast I'm doing with a friend of mine, and I was like, I love this lady, and now I'm here. So
And you and April are just were such gracious and great hosts. So it was fun and it was easy to just that's the best kind of podcasting.
oh well, thank you. We do try, we strive for that. So
Well, what's the name of your podcast?
own your essence.
Own Your
Yeah.
Essence. There we go. Coming out soon. Yay. Or by the
Yes.
time this comes out, it'll be already posted. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed, but yeah,
yeah.
we'll see.
So I'm so curious. I love what you do and I want to know so much more about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what an intuitive reader, psychic medium does, like what you do, and a little bit about your background, like how you came to be doing this?
Sure. Yeah. So to your first question, so a psychic medium, I think most people are probably familiar nowadays, but in case you're not, it means somebody that has the ability to connect with the departed and souls who have departed from this physical world. So the intuitive reader part is more, I always say that everything is energy, and I think we're all intuitive. I think some people are higher up on the intuitive spectrum, if you will, like, very hypersensitive to those sorts of things. But intuitive reader for me is just, tapping into the energy around somebody at any given time, or looking into the energy of a certain situation that's kind of going on, or whatever they want to explore in that way. So that's how I utilize that piece. Um, and so does that make sense before I continue? I hope that, okay.
Yes.
Um, Sometimes I don't, it's hard to articulate sometimes where we don't have a lot of words for this kind of thing, but I
Right.
try my best. So, um, and how I got into it, to your second question. So I guess there's a long answer and a short answer, so I'll try to combine the two. But growing up, I always knew that there was something a little different about how I experienced the world and the things around me. I couldn't really pinpoint what it was, or I didn't have words for it, but I was just kind of new. And I think at some point in everyone's life, we always have like moments of feeling like I'm a little different, but this was like a significant, pervasive theme in my life growing up. Now, in retrospect, I kind of understand it, that I am very sensitive to energy. So I was picking up on energetic cues around me, and energetic themes and things of that nature. And also, very what I call empathic, to other people's emotions and things like that. I didn't really know back then, but uh, I had little experiences when I was like a teenager with doing what I would call like psychic readings for like friends of mine on, I'm gonna date myself here, but does anyone remember AOL Instant Messenger? You had to like this great, yeah.
Yes.
Uh, so get a little insight to my age. But so I do like little what I would call psychic reading, because I was super interested. I'd read books about it at, like 13 years old and things like that. And it was such a strong pull for me. Um, I do know now, at the time I was communicating with spirit as well, but I didn't know that at the time. I thought a medium was something like you saw on that show Ghost Whisperer, if anyone remembers that, with Jennifer Love Hewitt,
Yeah.
love her. But I thought it looked like that, like we're having a conversation now, and I'm like, well, that's certainly not happening in my world. So that's not the case. I thought I was just pulling information from people's, what I would call now, like energy fields, um, which I can do. It's just a little different still. But I had this experience, I digress, when I was 21, and I, well, I had been out at, had been out at a bar with a few friends of mine, the night before, and one of my friends started talking about, um, I don't know, I don't know where it came from, but she started talking about, how she felt like she could kind of communicate with those who have departed. And something in me just lit up, and I'm like, oh, I want to know all about that. And she was talking to another friend of mine at one point. She's like, "Oh, I feel like your grandmother's kind of behind you." And what was weird in that moment for me was that I thought that I felt something that I couldn't place behind, my friend, the other one that she was speaking to. I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like I could have sworn like I just kind of felt or saw something. And again, I wasn't thinking in my head like, oh, that's a departed soul, but it was enough for me to kind of be like, well, huh, okay. Um, and I remember then the next day it was like a weekend and I was trying to take a nap because we had been out like the whole night and I was tired and the joys of being 21 years old. Um, and I was trying to take a nap and all of a sudden I don't always know how to explain this, but the best way I can explain it is that every cell in my body knew. I don't know how it knew, it just knew that there was a presence trying to communicate with me. And it was for the friend we had been out with the other night, the one who, there was the grandmother behind her, supposedly, and all the things, which I believe she was probably, around the grandmother. Anyway, um, so I just knew. And then I kept getting this feeling of like, text her. Like, and I'm like, okay, really? Like my analytical brain is like, I'm trying to nap, like you know, and of course it didn't make sense. And of course I questioned it and I was like, I'm tired and hungover or whatever is happening. Like, I don't know, um, even though I was not even hungover or anything, but I think I was trying to like rationalize it in my head. I'm like, um, this is just crazy, So it just would not go away. And it was just like, again, every cell in my body just knew, no matter how much my analytical brain tried to fight it, just knew like I needed to do this. So I did. I texted her and I'm like, I know this is gonna sound weird because we had known each other for years too. But I was like, this is gonna sound weird, but like I feel like and I kind of just went with it and sort of framed it like I had done this before. I don't know. I didn't know how to approach it. I was just like, what am I doing? Um, so anyway, I texted her and a few things came through that made sense, but it wasn't enough to really even convince me that something was happening. So then I heard, and when I say hear, it's more like a feeling, but it's this sense of just call her on the phone, call her now. And I'm like, okay, really? Like, we're going to do this now? So I'm like, can I call you? She's like, well, I'm headed to work, but yeah, if you want to quickly call me like before, that's fine. So I called her, and then that is when her grandmother did step forward. Now, I know that I said I had known this person for years, which I had. I did not know her grandmother. I think I said hi to her once in passing. I did not know anything about the passing. We had never spoken about it. I figured my friend would come to me with that if she ever wanted to. So there was no knowledge there that I could have like previously had. Um, and then I just started saying all of these things. It was like a flood of information just came over me. And I just started saying all these things that were making a complete amount of sense to her about who her grandmother was and about even like the living grandfather and his morning routine and the picture, the 8 by 10 that he has on this little table and all the things. So it was all like making so much sense to me. And I'm like, that's interesting. Like this is, um,
Did it
and
come from like, did it just like come out of you without even like knowing? Like, how did it feel? Can you explain that, or is it unexplainable?
so it's hard to explain. I
Yeah.
will say it was like a flood of like images and feelings and just like I'd get an image and I would know what it meant, or I would it would be very it's almost like information in within information. I don't know how to put it. If anyone is familiar with like the clairs, they call them like claircognizance, clairvoyance, things like
Right.
that. So it was a lot of claircognizance for me, which is just clear knowing. You don't know how you know, you just kind of know. Clairvoyance, which is like images and pictures and visuals, and clairsentience, which is like you just feel it. You feel the information. So it's a lot of like those three kind of combined. And uh, it felt like my energy raised, like when you get like really happy about something or really like joyful and you're like super excited and you're just like, oh, I'm like so in my body right now, like I'm so, like excited and enjoy. It felt like that where your energy kind of raises, which, in retrospect I realize is spirit and also my energy I think does raise to a certain extent. But what really sold me as I was talking to her, because I always tell people like I do this and I still am I still have this very analytical part to my brain, believe it or not, Uh, and what sold me on it was that I started telling her things. Now we were on the phone, not on like Skype or well, Skype doesn't even exist anymore, but like not a video call or anything. So I couldn't see her. I could just hear her voice. But I started saying things to her that she was doing in the moment. I'm like, your grandmother is telling me that you're doing this little, gesture or something. It looks like this. And she's like, and she starts bawling and she's like, I'm doing that in the moment right now, in memory of her because she always used to do that to me. Or, I mentioned like a shirt that like a sweater that she had of hers. And I'm like, I feel like she seems to remember this part. I don't, but she tells me that this happens or happened. Like something about her like smelling the sweater in the moment or, whatever. So I walked away and I was like, everything combined, there's just no way I would have known any of that. It felt beyond guessing for me. And clearly I consciously wasn't sitting there going, I wonder what I could say here. That would make sense. So I knew that. And logically, I just could not explain it away. I'm like, there's just no way. It was too much of a coincidence, quote unquote, right? Um, and and I laughed. But ever since then, I think like the next few days, I was like, okay, I guess I'm a medium. Like this makes sense. Like who wants reading?
That's
uh,
fascinating.
yeah, yeah. So
And
that's to answer your question. Yeah,
it's true. There are no words to express or explain things. And that's why I think when we can hear it set things said in different language, or not like language, but different wording.
yeah,
Like I was raised fundamentalist evangelical. And so for me, it was like we would be told that's the Holy Spirit speaking to you. And
mhm,
then I was like, what does that mean? I don't know. And now, people talk about the channeling or downloads, or I call it a prompting. And
yeah,
how do you explain that until you experience it,
right,
right?
right,
And then it's also like how other people will perceive it. And that's what you and I are wanted to talk about is like
yeah,
letting go of those perceptions.
yeah.
That was that tricky when you were trying to explain to people and people have this perception of like maybe what a psychic is or an intuitive and they're like, "Oh, really?
Yeah,
Is that
yeah.
hard?"
Oh, yeah. It was a journey, Stephanie. It was a journey. It definitely didn't happen overnight. I can joke about it now, but um, I think for me, a lot of it for me was getting over the fear about it that I was creating. So I had so much fear so this is the thing too. Like I was doing this for years. Like I was sitting in people's living rooms, I was working like two retail jobs at the time, and then I'd go sit in someone's living room for like 4 hours and I'm like channeling their departed loved ones. You know, and there were people in my life that really had next to no idea about, that like close people in my life that had not a lot of knowledge or if any knowledge that I was doing because I intentionally kind of withheld something, I thought and was so afraid of what people were going to think of me, if I sit down, with this person in my life that maybe I already know too, like doesn't really have much of a belief when it comes to these things. And, like, are they going to think I'm completely out of my mind? Because I understand that it might sound to some people like, maybe you need to check your mental state or whatever it is. Um, so I was so afraid of that for years. And I just kind of, even to the point where I was like, well, she might be accepting, but like, what about like the spouse? You know what I mean? Like, so it just kind of like bled to everything up until a certain point where I realized that in order for me to really truly live authentically in a way that served me, I needed to let go of all that and let the pieces fall where they may, and that I had no control over what someone's perception was going to be. Um, Luckily, I kind of lucked out in this that I think. I mean, I will say there were a lot of people in my life that I ended up doing readings for, and I think that kind of like swayed them a little bit, where they're like, "Oh, well, you definitely don't know that about me." Um, there were other people. I think that it was, like I said, a little harder and still maybe is to some degree. I have people in my life now that I'm still very close to and I care about dearly that we don't really talk about what I do. I'm not trying to hide what I do. It's not that. It's just that I think it's very hard for some of them to to understand, and I've come to a point where I do honor and accept that. And there is a very mutual kind of respect. Like there's an openness about like you do understand that this is what I do, and we've kind of come to this middle point of like, I believe that you believe in this for yourself, and that's okay. It might not be my thing, on their end. Um, I'm taking kind of paraphrasing some of their words. So there is like this undercurrent of respect and honoring where each of us stands. So I guess I kind of lucked out though because I didn't really have anyone to my knowledge, that was like, oh, you're insane, which I was so worried about.
Yeah.
Strangers is a totally different ballgame, of course, but I think personally in my life, it was really just me trying to get over the fear of, oh my God, like what are people gonna think of me? And I will say really quickly too, to add on to that, I mean, up until, probably more recently in my life, I was a chronic people pleaser. So I was like the poster boy for, people pleasing. Like, so I think for me, like that's where a lot of it stemmed to, like even before stepping into the mediumship, like I always had a great concern about how other people would perceive me or how they would respond to me. And I was always kind of trying to control that in some way because I was so afraid. Um, so if that kind of answers that question for you.
Yeah. I can relate to that. I'm also a recovering people pleaser.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and I don't know about you, but I used to have this thing where sometimes I would wake up or just think of something that I said or did 20 years before or
Hmm.
10 year, whenever. And I literally could not could not sleep because I'm like, oh, that was so stupid. What if that person thought that? And when you find out or when you learn or that person probably didn't they don't remember. They're not thinking about that. Um, but that would keep me stuck for so long. I'd be so worried about
Yeah.
what somebody thought of me or, something that I did years before. And I was just thinking, oh, it would keep me so stuck and worried.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're just able to give yourself grace too is
Mhm.
so helpful. But yeah, and that story we tell ourselves of what we think people are gonna think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, that keeps us small.
Well, it does, and that's what I mean too. But I realize that if I want to live authentically, and that to me just means honestly, to who I am, I can't be stuck in this fear anymore, because it was keeping me small and kind of dimming some of that, and um, so it just came to a point where I was like, I have to do this, like I have to have these conversations, and I also have to put myself out there, because that was another fear of mine, like how even strangers would react, which again is a bit of a different ballgame. I have various reactions from strangers, some that are wonderful and some that are obviously coming from a much more triggered place, but that is also something that I've had to learn how to navigate and just kind of putting myself out there in what I do, that um, it's really a journey of kind of understanding, like, and I guess understanding and always going back to that, like, this is what feels good for me, and that's the place that I want to come from, regardless of what anyone else might think or say or do. Like that's not my responsibility. That's on somebody else. I have to always come back to me.
Hmm. That's beautiful. I found I noticing a theme in all the conversations I'm having so far with people this season is it comes back to ourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of my friends, Doobie, he talks about journey to self. And at first I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. But as I've been growing, oh, I understand, right? Because it comes back to who we are authentically and living that regardless of all the outside influence, regardless of what people think. And taking those steps as we move forward each step brings us closer to who we really are.
Yeah.
And there's a release like that first step, right? It's so fearful.
Mhm.
You're just like, "Oh my goodness, what will people think? I don't know if I can do this." And it just gets
Yeah.
better and better, right? As we keep going.
It does. And it's it's something, I feel like, at least for me, like I'm always still evolving. I still have hesitancy and fear with certain things,
Yeah.
when I go to a next step or something like that, I'm like, ooh, this feels, I can feel this. Um, and of course, even still, like, for me, like I get the question sometimes from people like, well, how do you deal with the people who are like really negative about what you do and all that? Because of course there are those people, and that's their journey. But um I think, even with that, like if someone says something horribly, well, targeted, we'll say, right? Like, of course, I'm human. There's still a part of me that is, like I'll stop for a second and say, was that really necessary? Was that necessary for you to, but I think the way that I kind of deal with that now too is like, again, just kind of coming back to that piece of myself that's like, I know that this is part of in my language, like what my soul wanted to come here to do and part of like what it wanted to experience here. And if someone wants to project about something, like of course I'm human and again there, I have those moments of like, come on, really? Like do we really have to you know but at the end of the day I always say like that's not going to inhibit me from what I'm doing because like this is about me and my expression as a soul in a physical body here in this physical world, and if someone doesn't vibe with it or someone doesn't like, I'm not asking anyone to, if it doesn't resonate with somebody, then that's cool too. um so I think I went off on a little side thing there, but hopefully that makes sense.
It
Yeah.
does. And it's beautiful because when you can, I remember people saying to me, like, don't let it get to you. But
Mm.
until you're able to get to a place where you're comfortable with yourself, I didn't know how not to let things get to me, right? And now I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But it takes like a believing that, first of all, believing you're worth it. When you like I believed I was worthless for many years. So of course what everyone else said and thought about me affected me. But then when you get to a place where like I am, yeah, we're still human. We have these moments, but I'm more complete within myself that if you say that, it doesn't affect me like it used to.
Right.
So I
Right.
completely know what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I think as you get more solid with who you are, the outside worlds and its comments don't affect you in the same way. And like, yes, of course, we're still human, but I think like you're saying too, for a long time in my life, I derived my self-worth from things outside of myself, what people thought of me, how I looked, and again, we live in I'll say a marinade that kind of like supports that from the time that we're born, like looking outside of ourselves and, you're not enough and all the things like you need this. And I think so many of us just being human kind of fall into that trap a little bit. But of course, like during those times, if someone had some sort of negative perception of me, it was like devastating feeling because I was deriving my worth from the outside worlds. And it completely shifts and changes when you can start to see yourself for who you are and derive your worth from really the internal and then work outward, so it changes a lot.
Yeah. And it, it also takes away a lot of more of anxiety because I don't know about other people. I can only speak for myself, but having a lot of anxiety was due to worrying so much about what everyone else thought. And I was like, well, I know so and so is thinking this about me. And people are like, do you really know that? I'm like, I guess I don't.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, yeah. No, I can relate to that, and I think it was an interesting shift for me when I realized that because I would do the same thing where I'd be like, well, I know that this person's thinking this because like this and all these different things. And it was an interesting shift when I realized that really that's just a story that now I'm creating in my head, and I have actually no idea, what this other person is thinking, and maybe they are thinking the thing that I'm assuming, and that's okay, but yeah, it really kind of hit me one day when I don't know if I read something or somehow the idea got across to me though that it was like you're creating a whole narrative in your head about what you think other people think, and I'm like, that's true. So Now, it's easier, I think, to catch that a little bit.
It is. Yeah. I and sometimes like online, right? You're like, oh, people are ignoring my post or they're, you see how many people saw it, but nobody's commenting or liking, and then you think, oh, you can start thinking things about what they're thinking about you or what they're doing or oh, why didn't they? And then you'll have somebody who are just like, wow, I watch your stuff. Wow, I'm so proud of you. And you're just like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I grew up very negative. So my automatic thinking is that people are thinking negative things about me.
Yeah.
And it's always, whenever that comes up, I know, like, you don't know that, but that takes a lot of changing that around, especially at first, you catch your, like you were saying, you catch yourself.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, it's a journey. Like I still, have my moments of kind of, where I do have to kind of catch it and be like, well, okay. And I think to your point too, we're in an interesting time right now with social media and just all of that. So it is so easy, especially if you already kind of are experiencing that, kind of deriving your self-worth from the outside world. I think it's so easy to uh, use social media for that. Like, oh, this person's like not liking my stuff, or they're not reacting, or whatever, or um, clearly like, and then we make a story, about like, well, clearly they don't like vibe with what I do, or they think I'm insane, or whatever it is, and a lot of times that's just not the case, So, um,
And
so
even if they are, like you're saying, allow one of the things that I've been learning and it's so helpful is just like allow them to be them
right,
and I'm allowed to be me and
right,
believe what I believe, think what I think, say what I say, you know, and we can challenge each other and that's wonderful because sometimes I'll say something that I don't know and then, you know, um, but it's like allow us the freedom to be who we are.
yeah,
And so, you know, I struggle with that with certain family members who are very intense at times. And, I would catch myself starting to argue with them or just get really upset. And then I'm like, it's not my job, first of all, to change their mind or to fix them as we kind of want to do at times. And also like, okay, right? I don't want to take on any of that extra, any of your energy. Um, and for me to go on being happy, it's like, okay,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I think that's honestly been my saving grace is coming back to that idea of like, I can be me and you can do whatever you feel resonates with you, and we can hopefully meet in the middle and still, um, be pleasant and connect in whatever way that we can connect in that middle point. And if not, then that's okay too. But I think, yeah, that's really been a saving grace for me, especially again, kind of doing the work that I do and all that, where, there are a lot of heightened opinions, I'll say, or heightened, perceptions of, mediumship, especially, I think is like a big one for people. I tend to find that people either feel one way or very other specific way about, that type of stuff. And that's where that idea comes in for me. It's like, well, okay, it doesn't resonate with you, so that's cool. Like then I won't be seeing you for a session, and that's okay, and you do you, and you can have your set of beliefs, and I can have mine, and what feels authentic and true for me, and we can again still hopefully meet in a middle point, but if not, that's okay too. We can still both at the end of the day hold whatever it is that feels good for us.
Yeah. And that's what makes the world so beautiful is when we are all so different. And that can sometimes cause fear and anger and hatred and all these different things. But when we allow each other the freedom to be different and we can still accept each other and love each other for that. It's like, oh man, what a world when we're able to do that. It's so amazing. It's really exciting.
Yeah. I I hope that we get to that point more. I think I would love to see that more because, like you said, I think there are a lot of, um, like we tend as humans to see something that's different, and we do. We get afraid, or oh, that goes against what I've been told. So I feel like maybe I want to project about that, or I feel really triggered, and I think it's a whole kind of combination of things, like really learning to sit with when we're triggered and kind of be like, well, okay, why am I carrying this fear-based belief? Like, what do I kind of feel in my body? Where might this be stemming from at the moment? But ultimately, yeah, just kind of accepting everyone as they are, and kind of holding this space that says, you don't have to look and believe in the exact same way that I do. That's okay. Um, and I think once we do that, we'll experience a lot more peace. And I think we're getting there. It's just, kind of messy sometimes.
Sometimes we need that chaos and the things to seem like they're getting worse for it to really change. Because I do feel like you're saying there is a shift happening, and I do see more and more of the beauty in what
Yeah.
we're moving towards. And I don't want to get stuck in everything's getting worse because I do know people can feel like that. And I'm like, I get it. And yet we can't, if we think like that and we keep focusing on that, our energy is focused on that instead of moving forward in a beautiful way. So
Yeah.
we want to be that change.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And I do think that, what we focus on, we create more of in our reality. I like to be careful with that too, because I know that sometimes people hear that and they're like, well, I get really anxious about things. So if I'm anxious and I'm focused on that, am I creating more anxiety? Or something similar to that sentiment. I will say as a disclaimer, I don't think it exactly works like that. And I think it's part of normal human experience to experience a wide range of emotions. But yes, I do think to an extent with some caveats, that what we focus on in our reality does. I think it shapes the way that we start to see the world, and it shapes our filters, number one. And then through that, I think energetically we do start to create some of, what we are focused on. So I do think it's important to find that balancing act of, you know, um, not just only focusing on like the fear-based kind of, and it creeps in there because we're human and it's part of our experience and our journey. Like, and I mean, let's be real, we're bombarded with fear-based messages constantly, so
Mm,
it's hard to navigate that and really find that kind of balance. But I think one thing that I've learned through spirit and in doing this work is that, the fear-based things they're going to keep you stuck in that place.
yes.
Just at the end of the day, they're going to keep you right in that space. Whereas, if you're focusing and navigating, focusing on some of the other things like love and acceptance and compassion, that actually catalyzes growth and evolution and all of that. Whereas fear just keeps you right in the same exact spot. So
I'm glad you said that with the caveat and adding the
yeah,
nuance to it because I mean it is true. We can hear these things and there's all these like sayings out there or simplistic ways of saying it, and yet it's always like but. And I got caught in that fear too, like what you focus on, you create. And I thought, oh, but I had this thought, oh, did I just create something bad? Like we can get in the fear of that
right.
with sometimes what we believe about that. And so having those, adding that nuance to it is
Yeah,
wonderful.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, I think too sometimes, and it's not a judgment, it's just something that I have witnessed, in especially spiritual communities. Sometimes there's what we call like spiritual bypassing, where it's, someone is going through a really traumatic experience and, maybe someone then says, oh, well, you got to focus on all the positive things. And, because you're creating more of your trauma. And maybe if you hadn't focused on this before, this wouldn't be happening. And I just think for myself personally, that is tremendously unhelpful, and kind of insensitive if we're being transparent here. But so I think there's a delicate nature to what I'm talking about. Where yes, I do believe that we absolutely have the ability and capacity to create certain things within our reality. And I also think that like if you're going through a traumatic experience or whatever it is, did you necessarily create that? No, I don't think that either. You know what I mean? Or if you just have anxiety, like are you creating more of your anxiety? I do think with that sometimes like if you are worried about things all the time, there is a possibility that maybe you'll create more things to worry about. It doesn't mean that you're gonna attract all these horrible negative things, but maybe you will create in your own self, more things to worry about. Um, but again, like I think there are so many different layers that I could go on, for a while about. But my point just being like, if anyone just heard what I just said and like had a reaction of like, oh God, like just, find where you're at in your body and know that like I think it's a little more complicated than just like I thought of this one thing and now, I'm gonna attract all of these terrible things, you know. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes. And one thing that always helps me if I when I was starting to go through that is there's no like the universe, God, source universe does not want us to be in fear. And
Right.
so to have all of that, like what if I did this, the fear, that's fear. No, right? And so it's about coming through, um, and we will have these moments that, it's human. Um, but to be fearful of like attracting something because we've been told that adds more fear. And so, anyways, I got stuck into many of this as I was learning manifestation and law of attraction, and I was like worried about this and this, and I was causing more fear. And I was like, no, letting go of the fear. But that's been a journey, as
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. Well, I think, like you said earlier, it's also just about giving ourselves grace. Like, no one's getting out of this experience without having moments. I don't care who you are, I don't care if you're like the grandest master or, whatever it is, right? Like, you're still a human being and none of us can escape that piece. So, of course, we have moments still always of feeling fear or feeling anxiety or whatever it is. How we navigate that and how we respond to that definitely shifts and changes if we allow it. And I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I mean, no one's getting out without, having any of these feelings. And in the work that I do, uh, I think our souls, in my language, actually come to experience a wide range of emotions that you can have in a physical body. I've had spirit tell me that, like, when we're out of our bodies, like, it's great because we're all, we're surrounded by unconditional love and we're at peace and we're like, and I've had, certain souls kind of joke like that gets a little boring sometimes, we come to experience like a wide range of different emotion, joy and happiness and everything, from sadness and at our lowest points and everything in between. And there is knowledge that in that, and there is experience in that. So again, I think we're all human, so it's just about giving ourselves some grace. And if you're someone that's super worried, like oh my God, I'm going to attract all these things, just like take a breath and know like we're all in the same kind of boat in the human experience together.
Yeah.
So we're human. Yeah.
That's wonderfully said. And
Oh yeah.
so very encouraging because
Yeah.
like I always say, let's just be human because
Yeah.
there's so much stuff we can get caught up in people like like you said, like spiritual bypass or this or this. And it's just like, but I'm just human. And it's like, we gotta allow for that. Um, because that's who we are. And it's all a journey and we're learning as we go.
Well, I think too, just really quick to what you said, I think I've noticed too, and again, it's not a judgment, just an acknowledgement of, in spiritual communities, like there's a lot of talk about like, we need to ascend to 5D or 7D or, whatever the D's are. I don't know. I truly don't. I think it's like 5D that I hear a lot, but I've seen ones that are like higher. And we have to go through this ascension process and merge with the consciousness of one and all the things. And when I hear things like that, I do think there is some truth to, like like remembering that we are souls having a human experience and that we are all connected. And we always have that knowledge somewhere in us, whether we are conscious of it or not. However, there is this piece of me too that's like, we are here to have a human experience. So it's almost feels sometimes in certain cases like a bit of an escapism from the body. Like I need to like be up here and merge with all the consciousness and the 5D. And my response to that is always, well, how are you getting back into your body though? Like, how are you feeling in your body? How are you doing in this human physical experience? Because again, while we're here, we are physical. It is a piece and a part of us. So I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about those things, but if it's being kind of used sometimes as like let's get out of the body, sort of thing, we need to come back to our humanness. Because and I know I know that some people don't love to hear this, but I do believe that, our souls do choose to come here again to experience some of the physicality, right? So
Mhm.
just my thoughts.
Oh, thank you so much. This was fun chatting with you, Lee. It's
Yeah,
wonderful to
yeah.
hear. Um, so I was just wondering, if somebody would like to get in contact with you, how do they reach out to you?
The best way right now is probably through email. I'm working on my website, but I have it and I'm a perfectionist. I don't know. It's a whole thing.
It's hard. It took me so long to do my website, and I needed help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes me feel better.
Okay.
So, probably through email, which right now is just Lee Walczak, Leewalc, as in cat, Z as in zebra, AK, vitality at gmail.com. You can reach out over Facebook. I am specifically under facebook.com/Lee the Medium. There are, unfortunately, I will just say this, other accounts pretending to be me.
Oh,
Facebook doesn't take them down for whatever reason. I don't know why, but so there are other accounts that look very similar, if not identical to mine, but that specifically is my URL. So the facebook.com/Lee the Medium. Um, and
I'll
if
put
you
it in
ever
the
have,
show notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if you ever have any questions, just the email is fine too.
Okay. Awesome. And before we close, do you have anything else you wanted to add or any parting words of wisdom?
Um, it's a journey. It's a journey in letting go of people's perceptions of you, or maybe what you think their perceptions of you are. And also, we are here, like I said, to be in the physical and connect with our soul all simultaneously at the same time. So enjoy both pieces, or not even both pieces, but enjoy the multi-dimensionality of the whole experience. So
Hmm.
that's that's my advice.
That's wonderful advice.
Thank you.
Just remembering that is so helpful.
Yeah, it can be, right?
It
It can be.
is,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Lee. It was
Oh, thank you for
wonderful
having me.
chatting with you. And thank you guys for listening. Sending love to you all. Bye.